gathered around, had devotions, and then we got busy, making breakfast and lunch and getting out to school and work. Yeah, because they both worked. And I don't think it was any different than other. We weren't allowed. Daddy was very strict. Maybe you could go to matinee once a year or twice a year.
Wow.
And the party was maybe once a year. Don't bother to, you have to ask 6 months in advance. And even after I went to university, after the first year I came back home and I was going to go somewhere, and I think he wanted to say something about my brother should escort me. And my brother spoke up and said, "But Daddy, she's been on her own a whole year. You don't know where she was. I mean, why do I have to escort her?" But the typical Indian protective kind of family. We weren't just left to our own devices, and encouraged you with your homework and your studies and all of that. Now, in this particular home, we had a lot of cousins staying with us who went to school. I mentioned my parents' siblings before, but then their children came and stayed here as well.
So they came down from Sator's and
Yeah,
okay.
yeah. That's why eventually they got around to building MacDonald College, because my father was
So they
very
wouldn't have to leave.
influential in getting that done, because maybe 6 of them in this house and 6 in another house down. They boarded out and went to school. But what about the rest? So the Presbyterian Church got involved. We were always Presbyterian. Got involved in getting MacDonald College erected so that the
Okay.
students in that area could
So your
have
father was involved in that.
yeah, very,
Okay.
very, very involved.
That's awesome.
And many members of our family, both father's side and mother's side, were involved in the actual building of it,
Wow.
construction and so on.
Yeah.
The money, raising the money, and getting the job done. But I was going to say this table, every seat was taken at night because everybody was doing homework. Yeah, so we had our supper and then we all sat down to do homework.
It's good
And this was
incentive.
encouraged, yes. Yes.
Yeah.
And we weren't encouraged to date or to do anything like that. It was a pretty strict household.
You mentioned that, was it your father's family that ate a lot of Indian food?
Yes.
Can you describe what some of that was like and if that's changed with you over time?
Well, I think it was a lot of like rice and dal and curry, goat, I seem to remember. But goat was like for special occasions, I believe. So I don't know if maybe they didn't even eat meat sometimes. Perhaps they were vegetarian. I never kind of took any interest in what they ate really, but I know it was rice and curry.
And when you were growing up, same
Yeah.
thing?
Yes, when we went to visit my mom's side, my mom's aunt's house in Montfendu, very often, no, not very often, I recall us going there, perhaps after a cricket match. Now, my father and my uncle on my father's side were very involved in cricket. And he actually had an East Indian cricket team. And they used to play, they went to Trinidad and played other teams and so on. So that was another thing about his Indianness. Yes, he was involved in cricket and so on.
That's interesting.
And so I remember going to her house and we all sat on the floor cross-legged and they put the banana leaves in front of us. And out came the rice and then came the dal and the curry and so on, and we ate on the floor with our hands.
Yeah.
I remember doing that as a child.
My mom, she said she used to do the same thing.
Yes, yes. So, but I think that was just for special occasions.
Mom said they didn't own a dining table. So they did it all the time.
Yes, yes.
Can we take a little break? Thank you.
So,
was any Indian wear used in your family, like clothing?
no.
No? But I see you have a beautiful Indian outfit on, so...
Well, I went to India. I studied in India.
Okay.
I got a scholarship to do medicine in India, so I
Wow.
spent 5.5 years there.
Oh.
So some of the culture rubbed off on me, and I did wear saris from time to time. However, I came back and got back in the way I was before. But over the years when we formed the Indo-Grenadian Heritage Foundation and we had events, I got into Indian wear. And at first it felt like a costume. It felt very fake. But eventually I got into it. I'm very comfortable with my Indian wear now.
Oh, it's beautiful on you.
Thank you. I remember actually thinking that the area my father is from is called Digopis. And I remember thinking whenever I saw people with shiny clothes, not Indian, but shiny dresses, I hated those dresses because they look so hoolyish. Shiny, I associated with, I suppose, being country booky,
Okay.
you know, that kind of thing.
Okay.
So I shied away from shiny things for many, many, many years because I had my little prejudice about looking like a country bookie. Because I really am a country bookie. My mother is from St. Patrick and my father is from St. Mark.
Well, I love the country. There's something about the country
Yes,
that
oh yes.
you can't get anywhere
Yeah.
else.
But my mother was from the middle, the sort of town in cities, whereas my father was up in the village.
Okay.
And I guess this is why the difference as well. Yes.
But we do like to differentiate between each other, but we are all the same people.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah. Well, I know that you said you had some experience with the derogatory term, but when you left for college, when you got a little bit older, were you seeing any differences in society or the way
I mean,
that
when
people
I
were
came
treated?
back from India,
Yes, when you came back from
oh no,
India.
that was forgotten. That
Okay.
didn't exist anymore.
Ah, okay.
But I was away for about 13 years because I spent 1 year at the University of the West Indies, and then I got the scholarship 5.5 years, and then I worked for 6 months. Let's call it 6 years to do a little what was it called, a rural internship.
Okay.
Worked in a village, and I came back. I went straight to Barbados to work at the QE hospital.
Okay.
So it took me good 13 years to get back. So they had 13 years for things to change. But they were changing since before I went away. Yeah.
good.
Once we got to O levels and A levels, I don't recall having those kinds of influences. I'll tell you though, in India, they didn't like the fact that I looked different. I may look Indian, but I didn't wear the spot and I didn't walk around with my greasy hair and a long plait and my head low, and they don't make eye contact. That's considered rude, I guess. I was just the way I am now, and I would talk to you to your face and whatnot. And one man said to me, "You fellas, you all went to the West and you became Christians," and that kind of thing. They didn't like that I wasn't exactly like them, you know?
So, you being a Christian was an issue for them?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Did you have any influences on the religion in India?
I wouldn't say so. In medical school, we didn't have time for religion. Yes.
That's understandable.
Yes.
Okay. Were there any kind of organizations or events that happened in Grenada when you were younger that celebrated any sort of being Indian?
Well, like I said, Daddy used to have the cricket teams come together and play in St. Patrick, and they would have a goat fete after.
But they were all East Indian teams?
Yes, I think so.
So that's interesting that they felt the need to differentiate.
Yes, yes. And that generation did, for
Okay.
sure.
But the generation after that, that began to change?
Yeah, everybody became mixed. My husband was not Indian or of Indian origin at all. He was mixed. And there are not many Indian people now who are homogeneous Indian. Yeah, there's plenty Douglas. And this started since my daddy's, when he was griping about people intermarrying while I was growing up. Yeah.
That's certainly a good change.
Yes.
That's certainly a good
Yes.
change. Do you think that even though your family, you believe your family was not indentured servants, do you believe that that impacted Grenada and maybe the ways that people saw each other as being different? Which clearly has changed over time, because I think one of the reasons we're doing this is to shed light on what it was like to be in those kinds of situations the very early days for East Indians and how that's changed over time, because clearly the cultural kind of carryovers from being East Indian have mixed into Grenada's regular culture. It's just all a
Yes.
part of it, and it's beautiful and diverse, and a tapestry that one can be proud of. But were there issues back then?
I don't know, but what I do know is that they were sort of in little villages where everybody was Indian.
Mm.
And sorry, they went to the Samaritan Presbyterian school, for example, my daddy's people. But you had Samaritan and you had Red Mud and you had Fountain, all went to the bit of coughing, sorry about that. Samaritan Presbyterian school.
So I find my questions are far more divisive than I ever wanted them to be, now that I'm using them. So I think we have to go back and revisit some things. I feel like in an effort to bring out if there are any vestiges of being Indian, it feels divisive.
Um,
I have to restructure some of them. Oh, your blues match. They're so pretty.
sorry.
Your blues, they all
Oh,
match,
thank you.
including your cup.
I was saying, the Presbyterians Christianized the Indians. So they put up a primary school, the Presbyterian Church put up a primary school right at the beginning of the roads that went up into those three Indian villages. So the children there probably would not have had much of my kind of experience with being called coolie. But as they got older, they might have had a problem. I don't know.
Do you think, though, that that derogatory term came from indentured servitude? Like, what do you think the origin of that was?
I think it would have to be.
Yeah.
Yeah. Remember, I mean, the British just called people whatever they wanted. A lot of the names of people now are not what they were. Some of them were named after the estates that they belonged to. If you were working with Mr. Smith, you were so and so Smith or
Right.
whatever.
Right.
But I mean, there's a name like Voodoo means fool in India. And somebody must have heard somebody calling somebody Voodoo, maybe just pranking, and wrote that down as his name. And that has continued.
Carried over.
Yes.
Yeah.
Carried over. So maybe, those are some of the little vestiges of Indian culture. But other than that, not really. Yeah. And that's why I was concerned, because I realized I didn't have my story is not the typical.
But I don't think it's a bad thing, because there isn't just one story to be told.
Absolutely.
And I think it's important that if we have the different narratives, we can paint a more clearer picture of what things were like and why maybe things changed the way that they did. Yeah. So as the younger generation grows up, your children, your children's children, do you see them maintaining some of the traditions that you've kind of brought into the family, like wearing the cultural wear? Or do you see things changing with them as well?
Good question. Some of them will, some of the time. My children, perhaps not too much. Yeah.
Well, we really thank you for sharing your stories with us.
Thank you.
We appreciate it. It's really important that we share those stories, because once they're gone, we don't have them anymore.
That's quite true.
Right?
Yes, very important.
Yeah, well, thank you again.
Thank you too.
All right.